Mia Rivera tightened the strap of her worn canvas tote bag, the one she used for carrying fabric scraps and sewing patterns, and took a steadying breath outside the grand iron gates of Oak Ridge Riding School. The stable's polished white fences stretched endlessly under the bright morning sun, and the scent of fresh hay mingled with the faint aroma of leather saddles. Mia's heart pounded with excitement and nervousness, a feeling that had little to do with horseback riding and everything to do with being somewhere so far removed from her usual world. She smoothed the faded hem of her threadbare dress, aware of how it contrasted sharply with the elegant attire of others milling around the entrance, boots so shiny they caught the light, embroidered jackets, and sleek purses hitting softly against designer skirts. Her simple outfit and the plastic bag swinging from her arm marked her instantly as an outsider. Inside, the marble floors gleamed, and chandeliers sparkled overhead in the lounge where the receptionist sat behind a polished desk. "Dressage lesson?" Mia asked hesitantly, mispronouncing the word as dressage. Her voice trembled with hope. "I booked for this morning." The receptionist's eyes narrowed, lips twitching upward in a smirk. "You do know this is a very exclusive place," she said sharply, loud enough for other patrons to hear. "Not sure the simple seamstress with a plastic sack should be in here." Her gaze swept disapprovingly over Mia's clothes, then back to the waiting crowd, some of whom chuckled quietly. Heat flushed Mia's face. She shrank under their stares, feeling suddenly very small and unbearably out of place. The welcome she'd dreamed of was nowhere to be found here. Mia stepped back from the receptionist's glare, her breath catching as a few patrons exchanged knowing glances. Some smirked, whispering just loud enough for her to hear fragments of their snide comments. "That's why we don't get people like this here," a woman dressed in a tailored riding jacket murmured, voice dripping with condescension. Another man chuckled, shaking his head as he adjusted his equestrian cap. Across the room, a cluster of teenagers leaned casually against a polished railing, exchanging smirks while casting furtive glances Mia's way. Yet, amidst the muted laughter, a few faces held quiet discomfort. A middle-aged man in a tweed jacket glanced away, his jaw tightening as if wishing to erase the scene unfolding. A young woman adjusting the straps on her riding boots bit her lip, eyes flickering with a mix of sympathy and helplessness. But no one stepped forward to challenge the receptionist's sharp words. The room thrummed with the unspoken message: Mia didn't belong. Her throat tightened, and the sting of tears brushed her lashes. The months of anticipation, the careful budgeting, all the small sacrifices to reach this dream felt suddenly shattered. She didn't argue or cry aloud, she barely trusted herself to breathe. Quietly, she nodded, murmured, "I'm sorry," and turned toward the exit. Her footsteps felt heavier with each step away from the polished doors, the cold laughter still echoing behind her. Outside, Mia found a shaky refuge on the chipped wooden bench near the school's entrance. She curled her hands tightly into her lap, her mind swirling with memories that stung sharper than the breeze. She recalled the early mornings hunched over her sewing machine in a cramped apartment, threads tangling in the dim light as neighbors rose and went about their lives. Each hour spent patching uniforms and altering dresses was a step toward this moment, this chance to do something for herself. She remembered the dinners she skipped, setting aside coins instead of buying groceries, knowing that every penny saved brought her closer to the horseback riding lesson she'd promised herself. The nights when pain crept along her spine, a dull ache she learned to hide rather than mention. The doctor had gently insisted that gentle movement, like horseback riding, might ease the tension and give her some relief. It wasn't just a whim or a luxury, it was a measured hope for better days. Mia recalled the way she would watch the horses trotting past the main road as she walked home from the market. The graceful arcs of their necks, the swish of tails catching the golden light, it was a secret happiness she kept tucked away. One day, she whispered to herself, "I'll ride one of you." Those words had been her silent promise, nestled between the humdrum rhythms of her daily life. But now, the dream felt fragile, like a gossamer thread snapping under harsh hands. The way the receptionist had laughed, the glances and whispers, those moments branded a scar across her spirit. She wrapped her arms around herself, inhaling the faint scent of pine and hay, mingled with the sting of humiliation that clung to her like a shadow. Yet, beneath the veil of hurt, a quiet resolve began to build. Mia thought of all the times she had faced hardship, the missed lunches, the relentless days at the sewing machine, the ache in her back that no one saw. She was not new to endurance, each stitch in her work held a story of strength and patience. Her eyes traced the ornate columns framing the riding school's entrance, the glossy leather saddles resting on racks, the polished boots waiting in neat rows. This place, so perfect and exclusive, had made her feel invisible and unworthy. But beneath that surface lay something else, a responsibility she never expected. As dusk approached, the early crowd dwindled, and the expansive grounds grew quiet. The soft sounds of a breeze through the trees reached her ears, mingling with distant, contented neighs from the stables. Mia rose cautiously from the bench, wiping away a stray tear with the back of her hand. The wound in her pride still felt raw, but the dream, the hope, did not fully vanish. She stood, shoulders squared, ready to leave behind the grandeur and the layered judgments. But as she took her first steps down the gravel path, a lingering thought held her in place. The idea was simple yet profound. If this beautiful, shining place could be so unkind to someone like her, was everything else beneath that polished surface as perfect as it appeared? The question planted itself firmly in her mind as she headed away from the riding school, the taste of injustice spurring a spark that would not easily be extinguished. Mia's steps were slow at first, weighted by disappointment, the hurt from the morning still raw beneath her skin. She kept her gaze low, the gravel crunching faintly under her worn shoes, and thoughts flickered through her mind, wishes for kindness, doubts about belonging, and the persistent ache in her back that no fencing or fancy leather could mask. The parking lot stretched out ahead, mostly empty now except for a few cars gleaming next to the hedges. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows, and the day's golden warmth softened the sharp edges of her morning's ordeal. As she walked past one of the stable's side gates, something caught her eye. Just beyond the chain-link fence, partially hidden by overgrown bushes, a metal door hung slightly ajar. Curious, Mia slowed and stepped closer. She noticed that the fire exit door was padlocked shut from the outside. Her brow furrowed as the implications settled in. Emergency exit, locked during business hours? That didn't sound like a good sign. She glanced around. The world seemed quieter now, the usual bustling sounds replaced by the rustling of leaves and faint whinnies from the horses. A stable hand nearby was stacking buckets, humming softly. Mia's tentative voice broke through as she approached. "Excuse me, is the fire exit supposed to be locked this way? Isn't that dangerous?" The man glanced up, then cast a quick, nervous look over his shoulder. "Yeah, well, management likes to keep it locked. Officially, I think it's against regulations, but they say it's to prevent the horses from bolting out," he muttered, lowering his voice. Mia frowned. She thought of the families who might be visiting, the riders who might need to escape quickly in an emergency. The risk felt heavy in the fading light. Her eyes drifted toward the stable just beyond. A small whiteboard bore a schedule with names she recognized from the morning's lounge, including the receptionist who had shamed her. Beneath the polite veneer, something was off. To confirm her worries, Mia edged closer to a corner of the stable where two staff members whispered, faces serious. Their words floated faintly toward her ears. "Did you hear? The vet inspections came back last week, failed big time. They're basically running without proper licensing or checks. No wonder they don't want it getting out," another replied. Heat rose in Mia's chest, anger mingling with sadness. The very place she had hoped to find a moment of joy seemed riddled with neglect beneath the polished surface. She pulled out her phone quietly and snapped photos of the locked exit, the faded, uncared-for patches of the stable, and the whiteboard with the suspicious schedule. Her fingers trembled slightly but moved with determination as she composed an email. She carefully detailed what she had seen: the locked fire exit, the overheard admission about failed veterinary inspections, and her growing concern for the safety of riders and horses alike. Mia didn't write a plea for pity or sympathy. Instead, her words came from a place of responsibility. I am a customer who came hoping to learn horseback riding for health and happiness. What I found instead was that basic safety is compromised here. For everyone's sake, I hope you will take swift action. Pressing send, she felt a small but steady sense of agency replacing the heaviness in her chest. Mia moved away from the gate, still uncertain about what might come next but relieved to have turned her herd into something purposeful. The sun was nearly set now, highlighting the horizon with a soft pink glow. She walked slowly back toward the bus stop, her mind swirling with new thoughts and unexpected resolve. The world beyond the riding school had its own challenges, but at least here, she'd found a way to act, not just sit quietly in the face of cruelty and risk, but stand for something better. Her heart still ached, but now it beat with the quiet power of determination. Within days of Mia's email reaching the state veterinary department, a sequence of unexpected events began to unfold that no one at Oak Ridge Riding School could ignore. The morning after the message was received, two official-looking vehicles with sharp logos pulled up at the school's entrance. Men and women in uniforms stepped out, carrying clipboards, cameras, and measuring tools. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning every corner, every tack and stall, with a seriousness that cut through the polished calm the school normally projected. Word spread quickly among the riders and staff. The inspectors were there to conduct rigorous checks based on recent complaints, some concerning safety violations, others related to the condition and licensing of the horses. The locked fire exit, which Mia had pointed out with her accompanying photographs, was immediately flagged as a serious hazard. Mia hadn't expected her quiet report to gather such momentum, but when one of the inspectors messaged her through a local community group that had noticed her story, she felt a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. The vet authorities' officials confirmed that Oak Ridge was being cited for several infractions: unsafe emergency exits, unsanitary stalls, outdated equipment, and unlicensed trainers operating lessons without proper certification. Social media quickly took notice. An article posted by a local journalist, Lisa Marquez, detailed the events with a tone that resonated strongly. Lisa's piece highlighted Mia's courage in speaking up despite ridicule, the dangerous conditions uncovered at an elite establishment, and the broader issues of elitism in spaces that should prioritize safety and accessibility. The article resonated far beyond Oak Ridge's usual circle. On platforms like Twitter and Facebook, hashtags like #RidingForRespect and #SafeStables trended as users shared their own stories of exclusion and mistreatment at exclusive clubs. The comments ranged from admiration for Mia's bravery to angry denunciations of the riding school's careless practices. A few of the riders who had been present the day Mia was mocked reached out privately, expressing regret for their silence. "I never liked how she was treated," one woman texted. "Thank you for standing up, not just for yourself, but for all of us who felt we couldn't speak up." Meanwhile, at Oak Ridge, management scrambled to contain the fallout. Facing mounting public pressure and the official citations, the school released a statement apologizing for the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding customer service on the day Mia had attended and promising full cooperation with authorities. They announced that the receptionist who had publicly mocked Mia was placed on immediate suspension pending review. The staff union released their own statement, citing the need for better training and awareness to foster inclusivity and respect for all clients, regardless of background. This acknowledgement marked an unmistakable shift from the previous culture of quiet elitism toward an environment acknowledging its mistakes. Fines levied by the state veterinary authorities were substantial. Oakridge was ordered to close temporarily until all safety violations were corrected, stables cleaned and renovated, and all employees had undergone proper certification training. The news was a clear message: negligence and discrimination would no longer be swept under the polished veneer. Mia watched the unfolding events with a mix of incredulity and quiet pride. Her simple act of speaking up had ignited a wave of change bigger than she could have dreamed. Support poured in from her own community, neighbors whose words reminded her that dignity doesn't come from wealth or status but from standing up for what is right. A few days after the article went viral, Mia received an unexpected invitation from a local writing program known for encouraging writers of all backgrounds. They wanted to meet her, to discuss ways to make such programs more welcoming and accessible. For Mia, whose dream had been nearly crushed beneath the weight of condescension, this felt like a new opening, a chance to belong on her own terms. Even some patrons who had once looked down on her reached out to apologize quietly or lend their support. The receptionist who mocked her became the subject of severe criticism not only within the school but also in social forums where stories of inappropriate behavior in similar establishments surfaced. Mia's bravery sparked a broader conversation, encouraging others who had suffered quietly to share their stories and demand change. What started as an act born from pain and resilience became a catalyst that cracked open a space for fairness and respect inside Oakridge and beyond it. As the writing school prepared for closure and renovation, new signs appeared announcing upcoming reforms, stricter safety standards, anti-discrimination training for all staff, and open days inviting the wider community into the world of horseback riding. For the first time, Oakridge seemed to acknowledge that true excellence must include kindness and safety for everyone. In the community where Mia lived and worked, stories of her courage circulated as a source of inspiration. Her neighbors greeted her with newfound warmth and respect, seeing in her not only a humble seamstress but a woman who had stood against injustice with quiet dignity. Her actions were proof not of wealth or status, but of strength and grace. Mia herself remained humble but changed. She began to believe that dreams could be realized, not always on the terms expected, but through courage in the face of hardship. And in that belief lay a deep-rooted hope not only for herself but for others who longed for a chance to be seen and treated with respect. Weeks had passed since the dust settled around Oakridge Riding School, and life had fallen back into a rhythm for Mia Rivera. The days still began before dawn in her small, sunlit sewing shop tucked between a bakery with the scent of fresh bread and a florist bursting with marigolds and roses. Her hands moved deftly over fabric, stitching hems and patching worn seams, but there was an unmistakable lightness in her movements now, as if a quiet strength had settled deep into her bones. Mia's clothes were the same modest dresses she had worn for years, faded but clean, patched in places with loving care. Her canvas tote hung next to the door, a little wornier at the edges, but its presence was as steady as ever. Still, something had changed beyond what anyone else could see immediately. She walked through her days taller, steadier. The weight of shame that had once pressed down on her shoulders was gone, replaced by a calm resilience. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through her window, the small bell above the shop's door chimed. Mia looked up to find a young woman standing nervously just inside, holding a crisp envelope. The visitor smiled shyly, then extended the letter toward Mia. "It's from the state veterinary office," she said softly. "They want to thank you for your help and invite you to join a community advisory group focused on widening access to horseback riding and ensuring safety standards." Mia blinked, a small smile tugging at her lips as she took the envelope. Inside, the letter was warm and sincere, praising her bravery in speaking out and highlighting the concrete changes her actions had set in motion. It was an acknowledgement she had never expected, formal, yet deeply personal. "I don't know what to say," Mia murmured, folding the letter slowly. It means a lot, someone finally seeing why it mattered. The woman beamed. You helped change things for people like you and for the horses, too. Oak Ridge's reforms are just the start. Later that evening, Mia sipped tea by her kitchen window, the fading orange sky reflecting softly on the glass. In her hands, she cradled an embroidered handkerchief she had been stitching, a delicate horse in mid-gallop, its flowing mane captured in golden thread. The project was personal, a symbol of the dream that had once felt so fragile and had now become a part of her story. Word came shortly afterward, an official apology letter from Oak Ridge Riding School. It was carefully written, acknowledging the mistakes made, the hurt caused, and promising ongoing commitment to inclusivity and safety. Mia read the letter with steady eyes. She folded it with grace and placed it in her desk drawer. She wasn't interested in bitterness, only quiet closure. Days later, while carrying out her usual errands, she found herself passing the riding school once again. The building had fresh paint and new signage proudly proclaiming updated rules: safety first, respect for all riders, and community welcome here. A flyer advertised open lessons designed to be affordable and accessible, reflecting a genuine change in the school's spirit. Mia slowed her steps as she passed by, her gaze lingering on the newly polished saddles and friendly faces greeting a diverse group of new students, some laughing and learning without hesitation or judgment. The sight brought a small, satisfied smile to her lips. Her courage, simple as it had been, had helped open doors for others. Returning home, she felt the warmth of that strength settle around her like a soft shawl. She might never be a wealthy patron or a seasoned equestrian, but she had something more valuable: the power to stand up for herself and others, to transform pain into progress. In the quiet moments that filled her days, Mia worked steadily, laughed easily with neighbors, and shared stories of horses that didn't just live in dreams anymore. They lived in her embroidery, alongside the stitches of resilience and hope she wove into every seam. On a soft spring morning, as the neighborhood came alive with birdsong and children's laughter, Mia leaned on the doorway to her shop, watching the world move with all its complicated beauty. The sun caught the glint of her needle as she lifted it to fabric, steady hands weaving a new story stitch by stitch. She didn't seek status or applause. But what she possessed quietly radiated all the dignity and courage the world needed. And, just like that, it was more than enough.